Hello, my name is Holden Kokosinski, and this is my official channel introduction. So I wanted to go over a few things of what I'm going to be doing, and just, of course, give you all my own life story. So the thing that I'll be doing is called the Getting to Know You project. Now, this project, I do have to give credit to my conflict mediation or conflict management mediation class, and my professor, Miss Ritchie, for giving me assignment to give inspiration to this. So I will give credit where credit is due. But I wanted to basically create a YouTube channel where I would record people's lives and just ask simple questions about their life experiences, how they lived, how they've gotten up to this point, and just overall general things for their lives. Now, of course, it is with due concern that I must say I will have ground rules for this. So I want to tell you all early, just to make sure in case you watch any videos, I will repeat them in these videos. So my three rules are: 1, I cannot judge; 2, I cannot say anything about my own personal experiences without prior approval; and 3, and if at any point anything feels uncomfortable, we will cease to talk about that topic and we'll continue to move on. And basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking my GoPro and I'm just going to sit out wherever and just record people in their lives. So I wanted to talk about, I guess, my own life first, because in reality, I think that's the most important we can do. And I think with that, we can start to really understand what this project is all about. So I will start talking about my life. My name is Holden Kokosinski. I am a undergrad at University of New Mexico, and my project right now didn't start here. Actually, let's go all the way back. I was born and raised in Maryland, just north of Baltimore, and I have grown up with loving parents, thankfully. And for most of my life, I didn't really gain consciousness until I was sitting, running out of the bathroom with this froggy toilet cover. I was running out and running to the living room. That was my first ever conscious memory that I've ever had. And from there, I've grown up in school, mostly with daycare and all that jazz. I've taken a lot of consideration about growing up. I was always kind of thin-skinned, to say the least. Turns out, I didn't find this out later in life, I do have autism, the lowest form, I am told, and I am very bad with teasing. I'm not very good at deciphering what people are joking versus when people are being serious. I can tell when people are being serious, but I can't really tell when they're joking. And when teasing happened, it kind of hit hard in a way. And I wasn't really good at helping with that. And I think that's what I struggled with for a long time. And, throughout elementary school, I had plenty of friends. I was just doing everything, enjoying everything, being weird and all that. It was pretty fun until eventually my first grandmother died, and then didn't quite understand it at first. Just happened out of nowhere and didn't really understand what that meant, but I'll get to that later. And then, I kept going through elementary school, kept going through it, living my life with my family and my sister. Then eventually I got to middle school. And middle school, I think, was one of the first formative steps for me, because 6th grade kind of introduced me to where, just a side note, I'm sorry, but with my autism, I also had to sit out of classes and go to a nice little room outside with the special classroom for testing, for park testing, which is standardized. So that was fun. I get these for like meal swipes, but I have to pay for it. It still stinks. But I essentially grew up with that, and then I kind of realized where I was at in 6th grade, and I realized, I really want to appear less, I want to appear more normal. And I really started to change myself. I went away from that idea of I'm autistic, and I really tried to shy away from it, because it's pretty damning to say you have autism. Back in the 2010s, I did not want to be called the R word, and thankfully I wasn't, but I was always afraid of it. And then comes 7th grade. So with 7th grade was kind of that turning point for me, where I was very hyper as a kid, and with that hyperness, I think I definitely had a very, very, very large just time of framework, and it was exhausting having to figure out all the stresses of life. And that's where I kind of got mini existential crises. I was trying to figure myself out. Who am I? What do I do here? What is my purpose in life? And I think that definitely changed a lot over the years. It was very rough at the start, but one person I want to give tribute to is Mia Zinn. Now, Mia Zinn helped me out a lot. It was very, very rough time trying to figure myself out, and especially into 8th grade. Going into 8th grade, I think, was the turning point of who I am now today. And in that tumultuous time period, Mia Zinn told me one thing that I stick with even now today, and that's that I am like asparagus. I'm an acquired taste. And it can go either way, either comment or derogatory, but I choose to take it as a compliment, because that means that I'm me. You either like me or you don't, and that's what I like. You either like me for who I am, or you don't like me at all, and I prefer it that way. And I think I take it to heart to this day. With that happening, I was going through a very rough time with friendships, trying to answer, what am I to people? And I was very stuck on that question. Then COVID happened. My older sister, so my family has my mom, my dad, my twin brother, actually. I am a twin. And my older sister. My older sister got married, and as soon as we got back, all the schools closed down. Every last one. And so we finished out that year doing online school, doing everything, just making sure we all got pretty much everything done. And that's where my brother taught me the importance of slowing down. Now, this idea was to essentially make my hyperactivity, I slowed down. And I cut back severely on my hyperfixations, and the last time I would ever see Mia would be, and all of my middle school friends that I had at the time, was, pretty much after my thing ended. And essentially what I did was I stopped there and I went to this party, and that was the last time I ever saw my middle school friends. And so eventually I got to around high school. I went to, little school down south where my friends weren't. And I remember staying there for the first year online. That was an interesting experience, to say the least. I would, do all of my things. And after that, not much eventfulness. Went back for a little bit. Then sophomore year, I essentially, was gathering my friends, my close friends. A man by the name of Colin. He is a pretty cool dude. Met him in gym class, actually. And I essentially made his... Sorry about that. It's a bit hard to record with this, especially considering camera issues, but we'll solve it eventually. But Colin DeLone was my first friend, I would say, in high school. And I'm very thankful for him being there for me. And essentially, sophomore year was a bit of fun, I went to this program called Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness. Pretty cool magnet program that I did. And, I'm going through the motions sophomore year, gathering friends, having stuff, had a crush on one girl, then went to junior year. Now, junior year was a bit of tumultuousness. I had two girls that I was really into. Those ended with not so great results, but I don't like to think of it that way. I shouldn't have said that. But essentially, it was just a very rough time for me to figure things out. And I'm trying to figure out, I had the same problem in 8th grade. Well, what is my place to these people? How do I fit in? Where do I fit in? And I had a lot of trouble with that, especially considering, it's your formative years, and not everybody is as able and willing as to get you to do stuff. So when you add everything together, it's just a whole new pile of crap to sift through. And I think with all of that, it ended pretty okay, considering junior year was tumultuous. I met a few people who I really respect today. And then senior year, I feel like was a turning point for me as well. Because now it was no longer, what do I have? It was now, what do I have left? And I was struggling with, because I am a Boy Scout, and I was struggling with Eagle Scout, where to get a job, who are my friends. And, I'm very thankful that my parents helped me, even though I had struggles in middle school with grades. They helped me to get to where I am today, especially forming my lessons and who I am as a person. Rule number 1 is be a gentleman. Rule number 2 is take care of your mother. I'll always remember those 3, or at least the 2. Number 1 is do good in school. Number 2 is taking care of your mother. Number 3 is being a gentleman. I will remember those 3 rules for the rest of my life. And during this senior year, I was very heavily just in and out of, well, what do I do now? And it saw the turning point in whom I considered my friends. Now, I won't use the name exactly, but I had a best friend that I kind of saw just veering off some metaphorical cliff for me. And I saw what was going on, and I tried to help. Let me just be clear. I tried to help. But the more and more I saw what was happening, the more I realized I couldn't really change anything. That what I was doing was in vain. And at some point, we had a schism, and then everything tried to work out. But then she revealed a detail to me that I won't disclose here. But essentially, that was enough for me to say, I'm done. And to me, that hurt the most. But one thing that happened during all this of high school was that Mia Zin, the girl who helped me through so much, passed away of cancer in junior year. And that hurt like a weight of bricks. And the other girl, or the other one, there was another guy who I knew pretty well, I would joke around with on the tennis team, essentially was killed in a murder and suicide. And both of those in the span of a year really did a number of me on death. And I think for the first time, I really recognized the weight of death. And I really, as much as to people's chagrin, I really do stress the idea that I will die someday. There is no if and or but. I will die. And I left senior year, figuring out, I wrote letters to everybody that I knew because I knew I didn't have time. It's always like, I always love the quote, memento mori, although it's overused. It's remember you will die. And I use that to recognize I didn't have much time with these people. And so I went around and I handed letters to everyone I could possibly do. And I might be revisiting them sometime later in this video documentary series. But for now, I'm just sticking with recording mostly. So hopefully that that'll work out. But for the most part, I'm going to be recording strangers because it's a getting to know you project. I got to record some strangers. And eventually, what had happened later was I went to college. Now, college was a bit of a struggle for me to figure out. I really did want to go to Towson, but unfortunately, I was convinced with some dispute to go to University of New Mexico. And my parents really thought it was a good opportunity for me to go. And it was a big change, to say the least, but it was overall less of a fallout than I had to worry about. And I came to eventually UNM, and I did the same thing. I was figuring out. I met some people along the way. I met two of my friends, Hector and Luke, and David, who's now in California. But I also joined a fraternity. Now, this was because, I was scared and I really didn't know what to do. And I joined out of fear of what I was going to, like finding friends on my own. Because I'm not very good at that. But they're very cool dudes. And I do appreciate what they've done for me, because they've also helped me through my college journey right now. And, I met some people along the way. I hang out. I'm taking an economics degree, so that's very fun. But I go through my college experience, and, dating here isn't exactly great. To those of you who are thinking of dating or want to get better dating tips, don't use dating apps. They don't work. I can tell you that right now. They might work for some people, but the slimmest of margins that you get is very, very slim, because you can go and you can swipe on everyone, but there is less likely of a guarantee that anything works out. Because things they really might, but the probability, I would say, is very low. And I did have a lucky break, I guess, with one girl, but that didn't work going into spring semester. And then that was more as of just figuring out, well, the same thing happened, right? Like I figure out, well, how do I the question I always ask is, how do I matter to people? How do I look to them, and how do they view me? How am I leaving my imprint on the world? And it took some time figuring out, but eventually I realized I have my own value. And there's 2 projects that I'm working on right now. Considering last alert, spoiler alert, I do have a girlfriend. And, summer of this year, 2025, I got a girlfriend, and to no one's surprise. But, it was great to see what came of it. And I'm very glad for my girlfriend, and I'm very happy to be in a relationship. I think it's not easy to find the right relationship, but when you do, it's a fantastic thing to have. I'm very lucky to have my girlfriend with me. And I decided to do 2 projects. So one thing I do want to do is, it's called In Case of My Death. Now, this paper is essentially letters, the same I did in high school, and essentially its job is to make letters to everyone, all of them, every person I've ever met up until this point. I think for me, that's important because I have a lot to say before I go. I haven't been on it because, spoiler alert, college sucks, especially with workload. But I think with enough time management, I think I can get enough of it down. I think that's what I'm going to do over winter, hopefully, if I have enough, motivation to do so. So I'm counting on it. Other than that, I have this project, which is just going to be me talking to strangers, talking to family, friends, anybody I can talk to. And I'm going to interview them. And I'm going to ask them all these questions, same as here. And we're going to talk. And, I want to leave off with the message that I'm trying to, I guess, come off with here. I believe in the idea of Sonder. That idea that everyone has their vastly own unique lives to lead. And I think with that, that's a beautiful thing to have. Because once we recognize that we all have unique lives, things start to seem a little different, Compassion, empathy, understanding come into effect. And I think understanding that people have these life experiences is something untapped. And I really want to see what people are thinking, what people have been through, what is their greatest joy, what is their greatest sacrifice. I want to see what people's lives are. I think to me, it's very important that we do that. Because with everything that's happening nowadays, where polarization is so rampant, so persistent, I think coming together as people and seeing that once we take off those labels and we're really just people with lives. And I want to see what's beyond the veil. So, apologies if in advance if this video is a bit choppy. GoPro isn't exactly great at long-term video footage, but I fortunately have made it work for this last portion, so I'm really hoping this does work out, because I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be a big leagues content creator. If I am, that'll be pretty cool, but I want to pursue economics. I want to do this more as of not for the money making. If I do make money, once again, be pretty cool, but I think I'd use it for something else. I'm not here to make this a full-time job. I'm just here to talk about people. So hopefully, everything kind of does it on its own. I might get some cool interviews soon. So I'm really hoping that with everything, I really hope we can make something beautiful of this. And I hope this project really works out. So, enough details from me. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a rambler. So, if there's any more details you'd like for me to answer, just leave a comment. And if you're new to the channel, you can watch all the new videos that I might make, but please do watch this one, because there's a lot more details that I don't give, because when I'm talking to someone, I usually give out. But if you want me to do an insight onto a particular place of my life, or into a little bit, delve more into what I believe in, I could definitely give a little more insight. So thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all, and hopefully let's get this project off the ground. Thank you all for watching.